The rain fell in a steady drizzle, coating the small town's cracked sidewalks in a slick sheen. Under the awning of a weathered coffee shop, a man stood alone, his silhouette blurred by the gray haze. His name was Elias Kane, though no one in this town knew it. To the locals he was just the old guy, a quiet figure who shuffled through the streets in a faded green jacket, its sleeves frayed, a single Marine Corps patch barely clinging to the shoulder. The patch was sun-bleached, its eagle and globe faded to ghosts of their former glory. Elias's face was lined, his eyes a pale blue that seemed to hold a storm no one could see. A faint scar ran from his left temple to his jaw, a whisper of a past he never spoke of. He sipped black coffee from a chipped mug, the steam curling around his calloused fingers. The coffee shop's radio played a crackling news report about a local protest, something about a war memorial being defaced. Elias's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. He never did. His silence was his armor, forged over decades of battles no one here could imagine. Across the street, a crowd gathered near the town's modest war memorial, a stone obelisk etched with names of the fallen. A young man in a black hoodie, his face half hidden by a scarf, held court. His name was Carter, a self-styled activist with a phone perpetually raised, live-streaming his every word. "This monument glorifies violence," he shouted, his voice sharp over the patter of rain. "It's a shrine to imperialism and we're tearing it down." His small group of followers cheered, waving signs scrawled with slogans. A few locals stood at the edges, murmuring, unsure whether to argue or walk away. Carter's eyes landed on Elias, standing alone under the awning. The old man's marine patch caught the light, a faint glint in the gloom. Carter smirked, sensing an easy target. He crossed the street, phone still recording, his steps quick and deliberate. "Hey old man," he called, his tone dripping with mockery. "You one of those war hawks? Proud of your little patch there?" Elias didn't move. His eyes flicked to Carter, then back to the memorial. The coffee mug stayed steady in his hand. "Walk away, kid," he said, his voice low, gravelly, like stones grinding together. Carter laughed, stepping closer. "Walk away. Nah, I'm just getting started." He reached out, bold and reckless, and yanked the patch from Elias's jacket. The stitching tore with a faint rip, and Carter held it up like a trophy, turning to his phone. "Check this out, chat. Another relic of the war machine." His followers hooted, egging him on. Carter pulled a lighter from his pocket, flicked it to life and held the flame to the patch. The fabric curled, blackened and smoked, the eagle vanishing into ash. The crowd went quiet. A few locals gasped, others muttered curses. Elias's face didn't change, but his grip on the mug tightened, veins standing out on his weathered hand. "You done?" he asked, his voice still calm, but there was a weight to it now, like a storm cloud rolling in. Carter grinned, tossing the charred remains at Elias's feet. "Done? I'm just warming up. You and your kind, your wars, your medals, you're the problem. Bet you never even saw real action, just some desk jockey playing hero." The accusation hung in the air, sharp and venomous. Elias's scar seemed to catch the light, a silent rebuttal, but he said nothing. He set the mug down on a nearby table, deliberate, controlled. Then, without a word, he turned and started walking down the street, his limp more pronounced in the rain. Carter laughed again, turning back to his phone. "See that, chat? Another coward runs away. This is what we're fighting." His followers cheered, but the locals were uneasy now, their murmurs growing louder. Something about Elias's silence, his steady gait despite the limp, felt wrong. Like they'd just witnessed something they weren't meant to. Elias didn't look back. He moved through the rain, his boots splashing in shallow puddles, until he reached the edge of town. There, in the shadow of an old oak, he stopped. His hand slipped into his jacket pocket, pulling out a small, worn photograph. It was creased, the edges soft from years of handling. The image showed a younger Elias, clean-shaven, standing with a team of Marines in a desert somewhere far away. Their faces were grim, their gear dusted with sand. Elias's thumb brushed over the photo, lingering on one face, a young man with a crooked smile holding a rifle. A name was scrawled on the back in faded ink, Operation Iron Veil, 2004. He tucked the photo away as a low rumble broke the silence. Two black SUVs, sleek and unmarked, pulled up beside him. No sirens, no lights, just the quiet hum of power. The windows were tinted, but the doors opened and three men in dark suits stepped out. One, older, with a silver pin on his lapel, nodded to Elias. "Sir," he said, his voice clipped, respectful. "We need to move." Elias didn't respond at first. He glanced back toward the memorial where Carter was still shouting into his phone, oblivious. Then he nodded once, sharp, and climbed into the lead SUV. The doors shut and the vehicles pulled away, disappearing into the rain. Back at the memorial, Carter's live stream was blowing up. Comments flooded in, but they weren't what he expected. "Who was that guy?" one read. "Did you see those cars?" another asked. A third, from a user with a military profile pic, "You just fucked with the wrong Marine." Carter's grin faltered. He scrolled through the comments, his bravado slipping. Something about the way Elias had looked at him, those pale blue eyes, unyielding, unafraid, gnawed at him. Across town, in a nondescript office, a computer screen flickered to life. A file marked classified opened, revealing a grainy photo of a younger Elias, his face unscarred, his eyes sharp. Below it a codename Wraith. The file listed operations: Kandahar, Fallujah, a dozen others, each stamped redacted. A timestamp showed the file had been locked for 20 years. Until today. What was in that file? Who was Elias Kane and why did those SUVs show up? Part 2 is coming. Drop your guesses in the comments. Who's your quiet hero, the one who never asks for recognition but deserves it? Share their story and subscribe so these stories live on. The black SUVs cut through the rain-soaked streets, their tires hissing against the wet asphalt. Inside the lead vehicle, Elias Kane sat in the back, his faded green jacket still damp, the empty spot where his Marine Corps patch once hung stark against the worn fabric. The man in the suit, the one with the silver pin, sat across from him, a tablet glowing in his hands. "It's been a while, Wraith," he said, his voice low, almost reverent. Elias didn't respond. His pale blue eyes were fixed on the window, watching the town fade into the gray haze. The SUV pulled into an unmarked warehouse on the outskirts, its steel doors sliding open with a groan. Inside, the space was sparse: concrete floors, a few metal tables, and a wall of monitors flickering with data. A woman in a crisp navy uniform stood waiting, her posture rigid, a single star gleaming on her shoulder. "Colonel Kane," she said, her tone carrying the weight of respect. "We didn't expect to see you again." Elias's scar twitched as he stepped out of the vehicle. "Didn't expect to be here," he replied, his voice like gravel. He glanced at the monitors where grainy footage played. A younger Elias moving through a desert compound with surgical precision, his team behind him. The timestamp read Operation Iron Veil, 2004. The woman gestured to a chair. "Sit. We need to talk." Back in town, Carter's live stream had spiraled out of control. The comments were a storm of speculation and outrage. "That was no ordinary vet," one user wrote, their profile a Marine Corps emblem. "Those SUVs? Pentagon plates." Another, "You burned a hero's patch, dumbass." Carter's hands shook as he scrolled, his bravado crumbling. He'd wanted attention but not this. A local, an older woman with a diner apron, approached him at the memorial. "You don't know what you did," she said, her voice sharp. "That man's been coming here for years. Never says a word, but those eyes, they've seen things." Carter tried to laugh it off but his voice cracked. "He's just an old guy," he said, but the words sounded hollow. The crowd was dispersing now, the rain heavier, but the charred remains of Elias's patch still lay in a puddle, a small, defiant symbol of something Carter couldn't grasp. In the warehouse, the woman, Brigadier General Laura Hensley, slid a folder across the table to Elias. It was stamped classified, Wraith. "Your file was unsealed this morning," she said. "After what happened at the memorial, someone upstairs made a call." Elias didn't touch the folder. His hand rested on the worn photograph in his pocket, the one of his team in 2004. "Why now?" he asked. Hensley leaned forward. "Because someone's asking questions. That kid's live stream hit a nerve. Your name's out there again, Colonel. People are digging." She tapped the tablet, pulling up a grainy video from Carter's stream. The moment the patch burned played on a loop, Elias's stoic face unchanging. "They don't know who you are. But they will." Elias's jaw tightened. "I don't want them to." His voice was low but it carried a weight that made the room feel smaller. Hensley sighed. "You don't get to choose anymore. Operation Iron Veil is declassified. Your team's story, your story is coming out. The Pentagon wants you to speak at the memorial rededication next week." Elias's eyes flicked to the monitor where the footage of his younger self froze on a frame. Him pulling a wounded Marine to safety, bullets kicking up sand around them. The young man with the crooked smile from his photograph was there, clutching a rifle, alive in that moment. Elias's thumb brushed the scar on his jaw. "That kid," he said, nodding at the tablet, "he doesn't know what he's tearing down." "None of them do." Hensley nodded. "Then show them. Tell them about Iron Veil. About your team. About Michael. The name hung in the air heavy. Elias's hand froze on the photograph in his pocket. Michael. The young Marine with the crooked smile. His son. The next week, the town square was packed. The war memorial, cleaned of its graffiti, stood proud under a rare clear sky. A podium had been set up, flanked by flags and a Marine honor guard. Carter was there in the back, his hoodie swapped for a plain jacket, his face pale. The live stream was off. He hadn't posted since the comments turned on him, since the whispers about Wraith started spreading. He didn't know what to expect, but he couldn't stay away. Elias stepped to the podium, no longer in his faded jacket but in a crisp dress uniform, medals gleaming on his chest. The crowd hushed. His scar caught the sunlight and his eyes, those pale blue storms, swept over them. I'm no hero, he began, his voice steady. The heroes are the ones who didn't come back. Like my son Michael Caine. Operation Iron Veil, 2004. He saved 8 men before he fell. I carried him out. His voice cracked just for a moment and the crowd felt it like a punch. He didn't mention the patch or Carter or the SUVs. He didn't need to. The story of Iron Veil, of a covert mission to rescue hostages, of a team that defied odds, of a father who lost his son but kept going, spoke for itself. The crowd was silent, some in tears. Carter stood frozen, his throat tight. He looked down at his phone, where a single notification glowed, a news article titled, Silent Hero Revealed, The Legend of Wraith. As Elias stepped down, a young Marine approached, holding a small box. Inside was a new Marine Corps patch, pristine, the eagle sharp and bold. For you, sir, the Marine said. Elias took it, his fingers tracing the stitching. He didn't pin it on. Instead, he tucked it into his pocket, next to the photograph of Michael. The story went viral. Clips of Elias's speech flooded the internet, shared by veterans, families, and strangers moved by his quiet dignity. A fund was established in Michael's name, supporting families of fallen Marines. Carter, shaken, posted a quiet apology online, vowing to learn more about the names on the memorial. It didn't erase what he'd done, but it was a start. Elias didn't see the posts. He was back at the coffee shop in his faded jacket, sipping black coffee. The new patch stayed in his pocket, next to the photograph. He didn't need it on his sleeve. Some things didn't need to be shown to be true. This story is for the quiet heroes, the ones who carry their scars in silence. Who's yours? Share their name in the comments, tell us their story. Subscribe so we can keep these stories alive. Let's honor those who never ask for it. The sun dipped low over the small town, casting long shadows across the war memorial. Its stone obelisk, freshly cleaned of graffiti, stood resolute under a sky streaked with gold and pink. A faint breeze stirred the flowers left at its base, red carnations, white lilies, a single poppy trembling in the wind. Elias Caine sat on a bench across the street, his faded green jacket damp from an earlier drizzle. The empty spot where his Marine Corps patch once hung was a silent scar on the sleeve, much like the one that traced from his temple to his jaw. At 65, Elias carried his years in the lines of his face, but his pale blue eyes held a sharpness that time hadn't dulled. In his pocket, the new patch given to him at the rededication ceremony sat untouched, nestled beside the worn photograph of his son, Michael, and their team in 2004. The town had changed in the week since his speech. The viral clips of his words, quiet, raw, about Operation Iron Veil and the loss of Michael, had spread far beyond the square. Strangers left messages online, veterans shared their own stories, and the local news ran segments about Wraith, the codename that now felt like a ghost haunting Elias's present. He didn't read the posts or watch the videos. He didn't need to. The weight of recognition was heavier than he'd expected, and all he wanted was the quiet of this bench, the coffee shop's familiar hum across the street, and the memory of Michael's crooked smile. But quiet was hard to come by now. A group of locals lingered near the memorial, their voices low but animated. They pointed at the flowers, at the new plaque added to the obelisk, in memory of Michael Caine and the heroes of Operation Iron Veil. A young woman in a diner apron, Sarah, who'd worked the coffee shop counter for years, spotted Elias and crossed the street. "You're not hiding from all this, are you?" she asked, her tone gentle but teasing. She gestured at the memorial where a small crowd was growing. Elias's mouth twitched, not quite a smile. "Not hiding," he said, his voice like gravel. "Just sitting." Sarah sat beside him, her apron smudged with flour. "You know, people are talking about you. Not just here. Everywhere. They're calling you a legend." She paused, studying his face. "Doesn't sit right with you, does it?" He didn't answer right away. His hand slipped into his pocket, fingers brushing the photograph. "Legends don't lose what I lost," he said finally. "Michael was the hero. I just brought him home." Sarah's eyes softened. "You brought more than him home, Elias. You gave those people a story they needed to hear. Including that kid." She meant Carter, the protester who'd burned his patch. Elias had seen the apology post, brief, clumsy, posted late at night after the livestream comments turned vicious. Carter hadn't shown his face in town since, but word was he'd been asking questions at the library, digging into military history, trying to understand what he'd mocked. Elias didn't hold a grudge. He'd seen too much to waste energy on anger. But the kid's face, that fleeting look of fear when the SUVs appeared, lingered in his mind. As if summoned by the thought, Carter appeared at the edge of the square. He was alone, no phone, no hoodie, just a plain jacket and a nervous posture. He carried a small bundle wrapped in cloth, his steps hesitant as he approached the memorial. Elias watched, his expression unreadable. Sarah nudged him. "You gonna talk to him?" "No need," Elias said. "He's figuring it out." Carter stopped at the obelisk, staring at the new plaque. He knelt, unwrapping the bundle, a small American flag and a single white rose. He placed them carefully at the base, his hands shaking slightly. The crowd watched, some whispering, others nodding approvingly. Carter stood, his eyes scanning the names on the stone, lingering on Michael Caine. Then he turned and saw Elias. Their eyes met across the distance. Carter froze, his face a mix of shame and resolve. Elias didn't move, didn't nod, just held the gaze. After a moment, Carter looked away, shoving his hands in his pockets, and walked off into the fading light. Sarah let out a low whistle. "Kid's got a long road ahead." "Don't we all?" Elias murmured. The moment was broken by the low rumble of an engine. A single black SUV, identical to the ones from a week ago, pulled up near the bench. The driver's window rolled down, revealing the man with the silver pin, Agent Daniels as Elias now knew him. "Colonel," Daniels said, his tone clipped but warm. "Got a minute?" Elias sighed, standing slowly, his limp more pronounced today. "You don't give up, do you?" Daniels smirked. "Not when it's you, sir." Inside the SUV the air was cool, the leather seats a stark contrast to the damp bench. Daniels handed Elias a tablet, its screen displaying a secure email. The subject line read, "Iron Veil Archive Release." Elias's scar twitched as he read. The Pentagon was moving fast, declassifying more files, planning a documentary, even proposing a medal ceremony for the surviving members of his team. "They want you to lead it," Daniels said. "Speak at the Capitol. Meet the families. Tell the story." Elias set the tablet down. "I told it already," he said. "Once is enough." Daniels leaned back, studying him. "You know why they're pushing this. People need heroes right now. Not the loud ones. The quiet ones. Like you." Elias's hand went to his pocket again, to the photograph. He pulled it out this time, holding it so Daniels could see. Michael's smile, frozen in time, seemed to fill the space between them. "This is who they need," Elias said. "Not me. I'm just the one who's still here." Daniels nodded, his face softening. "Then do it for him. For all of them." The conversation lingered in Elias's mind as he returned to the bench. The crowd had thinned, the memorial now quiet except for the rustle of flowers in the breeze. Sarah was gone, back to her shift at the coffee shop. Elias sat alone, the photograph in his hand. He traced Michael's face, the memory of that day in 2004 sharp as ever, sand in his throat, gunfire splitting the air, Michael's laugh as he pulled a wounded teammate to cover. Then the explosion. The silence that followed was louder than anything Elias had ever known. He'd carried Michael out, blood soaking his uniform, promising he'd bring him home. He'd kept that promise, but the cost was carved into his face, his limp, his eyes. Operation Iron Veil had been a success, hostages saved, a terrorist cell dismantled, but for Elias, it was the day he lost everything that mattered. The next morning the coffee shop was busier than usual. Locals and a few out-of-towners filled the tables, their conversations buzzing with talk of the memorial, the speech, the mysterious wraith. Elias sat in his usual corner, the chipped mug in his hands, the new patch still in his pocket. Sarah slid a fresh coffee across the counter. "On the house," she said. "For the town's celebrity." He grunted, not looking up. "Not a celebrity.